Yeah, welcome to session number 6, the Racers HQ Facebook Live Q&A session for aspiring racers. Glad that you're here. As you can see, I've gone all out. I'm wearing tweed tonight. Yeah, it's cool enough here in the great state of Maine where I can wear a tweed coat and get away with it. So, here's what's going on tonight. I've got several questions here that we are going to get to. I've got one, a really interesting one, and then we're going to start with that one. It's from William Jack Burke III. Hope you're here. I want to talk about that. But I went and made quite a mistake a couple days ago. On one of my contact forms where people reach out to me and ask me questions, I put up a different one, slightly different one, and the way I coded it, I made a mistake. I didn't include a place for people to leave their names, which is a huge bummer because I instantly got a couple dozen questions through the forum, but no names attached to them, so I don't know where they came from or who I'm supposed to thank or help out. So if I'm reading through some of these and you hear your question, make sure you shout it out so that I can make sure you get credit for that. If you're here, I see there's a few people on already, make sure you say hi, especially if I don't know you. If you've never introduced yourself, please do. I'd love to shout you out and say hi to you. So make sure you leave your name in the comments. I'd love to know who's on watching the live session right now. All right, let's get into what we're going to be talking about here. Jason Hyde, there he is. Nice to see you again, Jason. I think you've been to pretty much all of these sessions now. Really cool. There's Calvin. Calvin, you know, man, I'm totally slammed. I'm backed up, and I will get to the article you sent me. Looking forward to getting. I skimmed it, and it looks pretty good, and I will go over it more thoroughly in a bit. I'm already booked for the next 2 or 3 weeks for content, so I got plenty of time. And yes, Calvin is writing for the website, which is very exciting. I love adding people and getting more people's opinions. No problems there. All right, we're going to be talking about, what do we got here? Where are my notes? We got to be talking about William Burke. He's asking, his hands, they say they start at 9 and 3 on the wheel, but they always wander up further to 10 and 2-ish. That's okay. We'll talk about that in a bit. And we're going to be deep diving. Pay attention. This is going to be a really fun one. We're going to be deep diving on the difference between fast in, fast out, and slow in and slow out. If there's really a big difference, when would you use them? What are the techniques behind it? Unfortunately, that's one of the questions I just don't have a name for. That's my bad. That's totally my mistake on that one. And then we're going to be talking about threshold braking. Ooh, interesting. And do you always threshold brake? Ooh, that's interesting. We're going to get to that in a little bit. And if we have time, we may talk about some different resources that we'll get to as well, because there's a lot of good stuff out there. So yeah, we'll get there though. That's okay. Oh man, there's I see that the Rags to Races podcast has shared the live video. Thanks a lot, my man. No doubt that is producer Jake Reel, who's also writing for the website. Nice to have you on board, my man. All right, let's jump into what we got here. William Jack Burke III, coolest name. Come on, William Jack Burke III. That's an awesome name. And we talked about this a little bit on the Facebook page. I think it was last week. And he asks, he says, my hands start to, they start out at 9. Everyone always wants to drive 3. There's Jake Reel. There you go, my man. Pleased to have you along. He says, my hands start out at 9 and 3, but they tend to wander up on the wheel to 10 and 2 as you're racing. And he says, I just can't break the habit. I have a lot to say about this. When do I not have a lot to say about something, though? Let's all be honest. I've said that a million times. Okay. William, I don't know who told you about the 9 and 3 thing. I don't know who's being so adamant and has convinced you that it's a bad habit, or rather that your hands are moving to a different position. Here's the thing. The thing I love most about racing and motorsport is that there is absolutely no one way to do anything. I mean, you can ask the same question to 5 different pro racing drivers and they're going to give you 5 different answers, okay? So the short answer to this question is, if you feel more natural doing it a certain way, do it that way, because that way is right for you, right? And the problem with a lot of instructing and coaching is that people are adamant that this works really well for me, and so this is the only way to do it, because maybe they've never tried anything else, you know? But, I mean, there's a reason that, did you ever watch the original Top Gear, Clarkson era Top Gear on the BBC? Awesome show. Original White Stig, Ben Collins, totally interviewed him. Cool guy. I might put that up on the web. I'm going to put that up on the website eventually. And you can watch him. He always has his hands up on the wheel. They're at 10 and 2. Most people will grab like this, but he actually leaves his fingers out, right? Kind of like this, so that this whole part of the hand, all the way across, is contacting the steering wheel. It kind of wraps it like that. Really interesting way to hold the wheel. But You know, and William, I don't know who told you that 10 and 2 isn't the right place to be, but I mean, I'm pretty sure they don't know more than Ben Collins, who is, you know, one of the best stunt drivers in the world, great racing driver, okay? And it goes like that for everything. It's not only how you hold the wheel, but it's the technique you used while you're using the wheel. If you ask any Formula One driver, you know, what kind of steering technique they're using, they're going to tell you that they're like, oh, I use the Zaccone steering technique, which is really cool. I tried it for quite a while. I do like it. I'm a shuffle steering guy. If you ask pretty much any stunt driver, if you ask Steve Buckley, the original, one of the original stunt drivers for the Dukes of Hazzard TV show, totally trained under him in Seattle. It was awesome. He's going to tell you that he's a shuffle steerer as well, because stunt drivers make a lot of lock-to-lock corrections. It's very easy to move the wheel all the way around, back and forth when you're shuffle steering. That makes sense for us. And so me having transitioned into racing, I'm still a shuffle steerer. There's nothing wrong with that, because that's what works best for me. If you ask Daytona 500 winner Derek Cope, totally interviewed him. I gotta stop name dropping. That's kind of ridiculous. If you ask him his steering technique, he's going to tell you he uses the shifty hands technique. Another cool one for sure. You talk to Jimmy Johnson, he's probably going to tell you that he just uses the overhand steering technique. You can see him in replays all the time. Hand over hand. It doesn't matter, because that's what works best for him. It's right for him. So if you're starting out at 9 and 3 and you find yourself keeping, you know, you always end up at 10 and 2, boom, that's where you should be. Rick Staley, great to see you. Really looking forward to seeing how you do back at Loudon this next time around. So I'm definitely watching for that. I got to come down and hang out with you guys again. I haven't been down there in a while. So if that's where you naturally end up, William, back at 10 and 2, that's probably the place that you should be, because if that's what's natural, just go ahead and roll with that. And that applies to everything in race driving. For me, when I'm at Lime Rock Park and I'm going down into turn 1, you have to slow the car way down and you have to shift somehow from 5th to 3rd. You have to drop 2 gears. I don't like using the clutch in that corner because I don't think it makes sense. I left foot brake. I don't use the clutch. I make one shift from 5th to 3rd. I just rev match it and the 3rd gear just slips right in, because I feel like that's the best way to keep the car balanced during that heavy braking zone, right? But if you talk to an instructor at Skip Barber, you know, he might tell you that the best way to do it, because that's what works best for him, is to double clutch heel toe downshift into 4th and then double clutch heel toe downshift into 3rd. If that's what works best for him, I'm not going to argue with him, okay? But that's the coolest thing about racing, is there is no right way or wrong way. To some degree, okay, granted, there is probably a horrible way to do pretty much anything, but for the most part, as long as you're in that sane window, then just do whatever feels natural for you. All right, let's move on to something else. By the way, what was I going to include here? I was going to add something. What was it? I can't remember what it was now. Oh, I would love to invite you all onto the RacersHQ.com homepage. There are 3 new resources up there, which are really exciting, because there's one for kind of sort of maybe entry-level drivers, I could say. Let me just make sure I pull it up here. I want to look at it. And it's that free resource is for it's 10 winning strategies to launch your racing career. So if you're a new person, make sure you go grab that. It's a free cheat sheet, no charge. Love to help you out. If you're intermediate, I can definitely help you. 2 critical concepts to get you driving like a pro racing driver. Another free download cheat sheet to get you moving in the right direction. Hopefully get you out of stagnation if you're stuck in one place. And for those of you who truly believe you have what it takes to turn pro, then I have 3 smart strategies for you to make a living in racing, which is very exciting. So go and grab one of those, whichever one is applicable to you. Ooh, need to make a quick adjustment here. Hang on one second. Stand by. There we go. All right. I hope you all have appreciated this nice Hagar tweed coat that I found at a where did I find this? Yes, I bought it on eBay. Had it tailored. It's very fetching. I love it. It's nice enough here so I can get away with wearing a coat tonight. Not too hot. It's been very humid. Let's move on to something else. What do we got here? And for those of you who are listening, I'd love to know what you're doing for steering, because everyone's always got a little bit different thing, and I like putting as many different concepts out there as possible, just so people can use what feels natural for them. But I always encourage people to always experiment with new things just to see if there might be something better out there. So if you hear something new, you might keep trying it. You may not like it. Go back to whatever it is. Okay. All right. Let's move on. This one's going to be really interesting. I don't have a name for this. I'm ashamed of myself. I wish I had collected the name on this. A question about deep diving into the theory of fast in and fast out for cornering. What techniques are behind it? Are there certain corners where slow in, fast out is better suited? Absolutely yes. I have a great idea. Let's go over to the chalkboard. Love this thing. Haven't used it in a while. Let me find some chalk over here. Here we go. All right, let's do this. I'm going to draw a really long corner like this. Yeah, we'll make that a little bit smoother. Okay, here we go. Now we've got a corner. Now he's asking if it's better to focus on fast in, fast out, or slow in, fast out. Well, there's different situations where we would want either one, okay? But I want to make it very clear that fast out is where you really want to be putting most of your attention. There's too much light over here. I don't like it. Yeah, that's a little, yeah, it's a little better. Right, okay, so if you haven't mastered fast out, don't even think about fast in, because there's not much time to be gained going fast in. Why? Corner exit is incredibly important. You have to focus on your corner exit speed. Let's say that there are two drivers driving two cars that are exactly the same and are capable of accelerating exactly the same rate over a certain period of time or distance, right? So let's say that this car comes out of the corner at I'm writing these backwards again, obviously. 22 miles an hour, theoretical numbers, of course. And at the end of the straight, he's at 44 miles an hour. That's fine, no big deal. Calvin Gillick says he likes to shuffle, to reposition his hands, depends on the situation. Yeah, everything's always relative. Thanks for adding that. There is no one good situation for all the time. Okay, so let's take the second driver. What if the second driver comes out of here at 24 miles an hour? It's 2 miles an hour different. I mean, what's the big deal? Really not that big. Okay, but if he accelerates at the same rate, then he's going to be going down here at 46 miles an hour. And when you look at these two different places, 2 miles an hour, I mean, you know, no big deal, right? But we have to consider the distance between them, okay? The distance from here to here, regardless of how it is, you are going to be compounding all of that speed all the way across. And so this is how drivers really can lower their lap time very, very quickly. So in this case, mastering corner exit speed is definitely where you want to be focusing. Now, let's talk about line. I know the second part of the question was, oh, I lost it. Where is it? Certain corners where slow and fast out, cornering techniques, right. Yes, so there are three main ways you would think about. Look at my old tree over here. I've been trying to kill this thing for like months, and it's just hanging on. There's three main ways you would go around a corner, right? There's the classic one, where you would apex in the middle, and then come out like that. That's pretty typical if you can see that, okay? Now, if this driver is cornering at 100%, like this, ooh, I gotta write backwards, 100%, then there will be no traction left for this car to accelerate because the vehicle is only capable of 100% traction, okay? Makes sense, right? Now let's talk about another method. Especially in slower corners, this could work really well, and this is something that focuses on corner exit speed, okay? Check this out. Another great line would be, I'm sure you've heard of this, late apexing. Okay, so the driver is coming down here, he's staying further outside, and then at the end he's making a really long run like this. Well, why would you do that? It's because once you finish making the apex, which is actually way up here, then you can start accelerating, because at this point, this driver is probably only doing 40% turning, and so suddenly he has 60% available to get back on the throttle. Yeah, see, this driver is not getting back on the throttle until here, and this one is starting all the way back here. So especially in a momentum car that's very slow, it makes sense to do something like this because you can start compounding your speed back here instead of up here. Now, there's another very interesting line that a lot of drivers will take. This is a great rain line because you can plan to do it and it does work, but it's a great backup line. If you go into the corner way too hot, this is something you want to have in your pocket, okay? So if you are coming in here, you're actually coming in a little bit sooner and then you're slowing way down like this, and then you're coming all the way back out. That's called a double apex corner when you really run it in deep like that, okay? And I guess the corner would be more like this. So it's a double apex corner. But look how far back this driver starts accelerating. Isn't that interesting? Right. The goal is to start compounding speed as soon as possible. So rather than starting up here, one driver is going to start back here with the late apex type corner, and then this one is going to start back here with the double apex type corner. Man, that's pretty interesting. So if this driver can gain another 2 miles an hour here, another 2 miles an hour, then he's going to be going 4 miles an hour faster than this guy, and all that speed is compounded all the way across the straightaway. Very interesting stuff. And these are the kind of things that pro racing drivers think about. Oh, by the way, the rain line is good because if you're planning on doing the late apex, and say you go in too deep, you lock up the tires, you can make an adjustment and actually run the car further into the corner before you really start braking, right? Because you have way less traction on wet anyway. So it's a great backup line. Make sure you keep that in your pocket. It's very important if you're doing a lot of racing on a wet surface or slippery surface. Let's see what happens if I plug this thing in. There, okay. Yeah. Yeah, I got it. Okay. Yeah. All right. Let's move on to something else here. Here we go. By the way, if you're watching, I'd love for you to say hi if you haven't introduced yourself yet. I always like meeting new people, and make sure you say hello in the comments so I can shout you out and see what you've got going on. Oops, lost my screen there. Here we go. All right, let's see here. Now again, I'm ashamed of myself because I collected this question last week in a comment field where I forgot to leave a section for people to leave their names, so I don't know who this one is from, but it is a good question. All right, check this out. How do pro racing drivers get threshold braking right every single time? Do they even threshold brake all the time? Easy answer, definitely not. They don't. Because when racing drivers are driving on the limit, cars get very dynamic. The closer a car is to the limit, the more dynamic the car gets. And that means that in that moment, small adjustments actually make a huge drastic change to the car. So when you're at the limit in a corner and you just tap the brakes, the car is very likely to go for a spin, which is really weird because most people don't think that way. I would say that threshold braking is something that you'll never ever do unless there's a really long braking zone. If there's really any speed adjustment in a corner, you're probably never going to use threshold braking at all because the cars are just too dynamic. I mean, if you let me back up and say it this way. Pro racing drivers don't think like club or regional racing drivers because when a club driver comes into a braking zone, he thinks, I need to get this car slowed down, right? But a pro racer comes into the braking zone saying, how do I manipulate the weight transfer in this car so that I have maximum grip going into the corner? And like I said earlier, there's not a lot of time to be gained or lost in braking zones because they're so much shorter than the distance that you run out of the straightaway. Look at, the braking zone right here is probably only, probably like from here to here. It's very short. And so it's not that big a deal, right? So rather than trying to make your objective to take off as much speed as possible in the braking zone, and that means a lot of people think fast is going in late, being that white knuckle guy and braking as late as possible. No, that's not true because when you brake really late and you stop on the brakes, you're actually shifting a lot of weight forward in the vehicle, right? And the problem with that is that once you finally get to the corner entry point, the balance is going to be all messed up. Yes, there's going to be a lot of grip over the front for the front tires to be able to turn in, but the rear is going to be so light because you've shifted so much weight off of it that there's a very good chance you're going to spin the car. And so suddenly threshold braking doesn't make a lot of sense. So for a pro racer who's in a really long braking zone, he may actually brake a little less, and he'll give up that speed going up to the corner because he knows that if his car is balanced the right way, he'll be able to carry a lot more speed into the corner, through the corner, and out onto the corner exit, which is what we've been talking about. So he's not as concerned about the braking zones as everyone else. Now, I want to show you something that I've been working on. I've got a few minutes that we can dedicate to this. I've been working on a really cool thing where I've been coaching inside iRacing, and I've been doing a lot of cool screen capture stuff, but I want to show you exactly how dynamic cars react. And so I'm going to show you going into the first turn at Lime Rock Park. I'm actually just going to flip this around. Can I do this? Can I flip this around during the live video? Yeah, I think I can. Ah, cool. All right, so I'm just going to show you right here. I filmed this a little while ago. Let me just show you what I'm talking about. I hope you can hear it here. And I just wanted to use this example. You guys are the very first people to actually see this. So I've been coaching in here. So this is what this looks like. Here we go. Look what happens right here. Just this little bit of 10% brake input is causing the rear end to be light because we're shifting weight forward, and now the rear end is starting to slide out, and I have to turn to the left to catch it during this right-hand corner. Now, this is a little more radical than what we would want, but it's a great example of what you are capable of doing if you understand how weight transfer works. Let's look at another example. We're going to keep going. I think I did it twice here in this example. Turning in, no problems, about 80% throttle, and if the car is starting to understeer and I want it to rotate, I think right about here I'm going to come on the brakes just a smidge. Just that little tiny amount of brakes is enough to shift enough weight forward to make the rear light. And we'll see it right here. The rear of the car again is going to step out just a little, and I have to react to get things fixed. Now, this is not a good example.
You see what I'm talking about? Just that tiny little bit of brake input was enough to upset the car. So for someone who's asking about threshold braking, there isn't a lot of threshold braking in racing. I know people think that, getting in on the very, very edge of traction, sometimes in very long braking zones, yes. But as you can see, that car was very dynamic. It was on the edge, and just that little tiny bit of 10% brake input was all it took to put the car into a skid. So without understanding how weight moves around a vehicle, there's really no point in even racing at all. That's the big reason that I'm putting together this resource. I'm really excited about it because I can get down and dirty and actually do a lot of coaching in slow motion during the replay mode of iRacing. Very cool stuff. So I hope that that makes sense, and I think we can move on to the next thing here. I just want to make sure I got that grabbed that question all the way through. I thought there was another part. No, I think that was it. Yep, that was it. All right, before we move into the next one, I know that you're watching. I can see what's going on here. So if you haven't said hello, please do. Please give a shout out in the comments. I'd love to say hello and introduce myself. I like meeting new people. It's my favorite thing. Let's move on. And by the way, I would love to know what your reaction was about that last video I showed you. If it was helpful, if you were able to see everything, see the inputs, that's going to be really valuable to me to get your feedback on something like that, because there is a lot of time and effort going into that particular resource. So if that's something you think would be helpful for you to see what's happening at the fundamental level at speed inside the most accurate racing simulator in the world in slow motion, narrated by yours truly, make sure you let me know if that you think that could be helpful or not. I'd love to have your feedback on that. Right, let's continue on here. Another anonymous question. Shame on me. Unbelievable. Aside from seat time and simulators, what resources do you use to get better? Are there resources that are not helpful? Are there resources that are not helpful? Oh, great question. I would say that there are two types of resources. The first one, Jake Reel saw it just fine. Think it's a great idea. A lot of people could benefit from it, myself included. Cool. Thanks for the feedback, Jake. Appreciate it. Oops. Okay. I think there are two categories here that we can consider about resources to get better. I'm all about resources. I promise you, I know what's out there better than anyone else. I'm extremely competitive, and I like my stuff to be better than everybody else's. So I'm always out there studying everyone else's resources, things that people have out there. I've bought a lot of them. I consume a lot of them. I've read pretty much everything. I've watched all the videos. Whatever's out there, I probably know about it. So aside from seat time and simulators, what are the resources to get better? Like I said, there are two categories here. The first one, you have to break down your training into two sections. You know what I'm saying? The first section is acquiring new knowledge, and then the next one is implementing that knowledge. Okay, so let's talk about the first one, because you can't just start, implementing things that you haven't learned yet. And most people think that seat time is the answer. It's not. You have to have new things to go implement. So the first step is learning new things, of course. So I think that one of the most underrated in this day and age resources, Rick Staley says, I think that'd be very helpful, and I find Turn 1 to be a bear. I love Lime Rock Park. I race there all the time, but Turn 1 is definitely the trickiest part, for sure, Rick. Thanks for confirming that I'm not totally out of my mind by thinking that same thing. I think that books are totally underrated in this day and age because people just don't want to sit down and, put their face on black ink on white pages. That's really not our culture anymore. That's one reason I love producing digital content about this thing, about the racing industry, because it's much more consumable, it's a lot more relatable, and that's kind of the direction that everything is going. And of course, I have a huge bookshelf over here of all of my racing books, and I've read pretty much everything that's out there that is supposed to be even a little bit good. Highly, highly recommend, relatively in order. I would say that Carroll Smith's Tune to Win is among the best. You will learn more about race driving in the first 20 pages than you will about anything else. Hey, there's Charlie Baxley saying hello. Nice to see you, Charlie. Charlie's one of my sponsored racing drivers. Got a few other sponsors as well. Fortune Auto, I believe Amsoil, and hit me up in the comments, Charlie. I can't remember who else you're supported by, but I want to shout him out. So make sure you put him in their comments right now. Carroll Smith's Tune to Win, it's not really a driving book, but it's the book about how the vehicle interacts with the driving surface, and it's absolutely fascinating. I could not believe how many aha moments I had in the first 20 pages. I was like, oh, there it is. Burns Stainless Exhaust. Thanks, Charlie Baxley. Charlie Baxley, Racers HQ, sponsored driver, also sponsored by Burns Exhaust. Man, that G35 sounds like a
Tornado. It is awesome. Love the sound of that thing, man. Thanks for giving me that so I could shout it out. Carol Smith's Tune to Win. Super boring read. Very, very dry, but worth every single second that you invest in reading it, because, like I said, if you just go for seat time without new knowledge, you're really not going to be accomplishing anything at all. So make sure you look up Tune to Win. It's getting a little rare, so buy it now. It's on the expensive side now. I would say that probably my next favorite book is probably the Skip Barber book, just because of its comprehensive nature. I mean, we all know Skip Barber. The Skip Barber Racing School is probably the best tarmac racing school in the world. And the book that they put out, it was in the late 80s at this point, but the book that they put out is amazing. There are several authors that write different sections. It's got Danny Sullivan. Oh, come on. Danny Sullivan was one of the best Penske drivers back in the 70s, and he just knows what he's talking about. So if you want to just, I mean, it is extremely comprehensive. Of the super basics all the way through the technical stuff. They'll teach you all about rotation, driving in the rain, passing in the rain, restarting in the rain, all kinds of really cool stuff. So I would highly recommend that one as well. Anything that has Ross Bentley's name on the cover is going to be gold for sure. Henry Watts has a great autocross book called Secrets of Solo Racing. That's a little old now, but it's still extremely relevant. I think it was from the early 80s. I think those are all my favorite written ones. I do have some other ones, but they're not quite as good. Once you have and of course, racershq.com. If you don't like reading, make sure you go to racershq.com, because I'm not presenting new information on the website. I'm just presenting old information in a very tactical, consumable way, which is digitally, and it's working very, very well. So once you have new knowledge, then you can start thinking about how to implement that knowledge. And the second part of the question was, how, aside from seat time and simulators, what resources do you use to get better? Jake Reel says Skip Barber is soon to be extinct, unfortunately. He's saying that Skip Barber filed for bankruptcy? Oh my goodness, that is the first I've heard of that. The book, however, is great and hopefully will be around for years. Wow, I need to go read about that as soon as I get off of here. That's absolutely remarkable. Wow, I've never heard of such a thing. Who is going to fill the motorsport education void when Skip Barber is gone? That's the next question. Interesting. Wow, I'm almost at a loss for words, which I promise you does not happen to me very often, because I'm both opinionated and knowledgeable, and so I love to talk. Jake Reel says they owe millions to Trax. Jake, send me a link. I want to read this. I need to be as smart as you are. I'm feeling a little left out of the loop, so send me a link so that I can be as intelligent as Jake Reel, producer of the Rags to Races podcast and guest contributor on racershq.com. I keep plugging all these things. Calvin says hopefully they find a buyer. I agree with that. Yeah, what a huge bummer. End of an era for sure. Skip Barber has been synonymous with motorsport education for decades. I had no idea. I'm actually a little sad about this, and I will find out as much as possible. Jason High says it's disappointing because he's near Sebring, and they were there. Yeah, I know Sebring was a very popular place for them to be. I'm making a prediction here. I predict that Bondurant will probably acquire the Skip Barber assets for 10 cents on the dollar. They're not worth anything, obviously, if they owe millions of dollars. But it seems like Bondurant is doing pretty well. I think Bondurant is doing a... yep, Jason says, I was looking for a driving school alternatives. Yes, I would consider the Bondurant School of Driving. I don't know if they have anything in the Northeast or even on the East Coast. I think Arizona is where they're based out of, but they've been doing things that Skip Barber has not been doing. They've been doing a lot of neat things for a long time, so they always acquire the brand new sports cars, muscle cars, and it's very flashy, and people like to go down there. Also, they have a great karting school. The kart racing participation numbers are extremely high here in the States, and it's a bummer that Skip Barber overlooked that. It's too bad. I think another reason that Skip Barber has gone out of business, pending confirmation for myself, of course I do trust Jake, but I want to read it for myself before I commit too much to this, but I also think that they've gone out of business because a large part of their income was high-performance driving away from the racetrack. They did a lot of stunt driving type of things, which is a great source of income. It's a great skill to learn, stunt driving. Of course, I am a professional stunt driver. I learned from the Drivers East high-performance driving school in New Jersey from Mike Burke, Roy Farfel, and Kevin Rogers, who are at the top of the East Coast industry they had just done the Bourne Ultimatum movies, the Indiana Jones movies, I Am Legend, all those cool movies on the East Coast. When I was there, I've also trained under Steve Buckley in Seattle at the International Stunt School. But the problem is that here on the East Coast, several stunt driving schools have moved into the area, and they're much more specific. Jake Reel says Bondurant is only in Arizona. Check with your SCCA chapter.
Some do several driving schools throughout the year. I'm sorry, Jake, I agree with you, but they're just not on the same caliber. What a tragedy to lose to Skip Barber Racing School. Unbelievable. So I think that that's a big reason these actual professional stunt driving schools specializing only in television and film driving have probably helped to run Skip Barber out of business. A huge bummer, but it makes sense to go to these stunt driving schools instead of Skip Barber for that, because the people teaching at these stunt driving schools have deep networking pockets, which means that you'll be able to meet a lot of people. Networking is 9/10 of the game. When I was there, I was able to meet and connect with and do a little bit of work with a guy named Greg Watkiss, who is now a stunt coordinator who splits his time between New York and Florida. And of course, he's at the top of the industry too. He has doubled for Will Smith, Denzel Washington. He's a very cool guy. Boy, off on a tangent. I can't believe this is happening. Skip Barber going down the drain. What a tragedy. I have to polish off this question, though. I didn't quite finish it. Are there resources that are not helpful? Absolutely. I made a strong case against forums in the last, I believe, the last 1 or 2 sessions. I would say that forums are a bummer because they're just well-intentioned people in front of a keyboard who quickly turn themselves into experts. Anyone with a keyboard can become an expert, and so you have to be very careful about where you're getting your advice from. I would stay away from forums as far as possible. Example: I got an email from a really nice guy that I've been talking to back and forth. Who was it? It was. Stand by. I'm going to pull it up right now. It was from, I don't know the name, I'm not going to be able to find it, but it was a very complex question about tire sizes and making adjustments, down to like the 0.2 of an inch, and trying to make up for not being able to find a certain tire model. Don't worry about it, is what my answer was essentially, is because he went onto the forums and got confused about a bunch of people who were telling him to do this one thing and it didn't make sense, so I told him, look, just wait, get the exact tire you need, and don't worry about it, put your focus on something else. Yeah. Boy, honestly, I'm a little distracted by the Skip Barber thing. Huge news, Jake. Thank you for bringing that up. I still am going to need a link. Make sure you send that to me, and I will have to do some reporting on that at some point. Fascinating stuff. Like I said, I'm not usually at a loss for words. All right, so we're winding down here. We definitely covered a lot today. We talked about making sure that you are doing what feels natural for you, within that window of sanity. And, for William, it was, being concerned that his hands were moving from 9 and 3 to 10 and 2. Don't worry about it. If that's where your hands want to be, allow them to do that naturally and start worrying about something else. Don't let anybody ever tell you about steering technique. You don't need coaching about that. Whatever comes naturally is probably going to work fine for you. We dove deep over here on the fast in, fast out thing. Really pleased to have the chalkboard up here. I think that was really helpful. There's certainly different lines over here, the regular one, the late apex one, and then the double apex one as well. Make sure that you are reviewing that if you think you need to. And always make sure you can email me, matt@racershq.com. I love answering questions. We talked about threshold braking, went into the video very briefly, and then we talked about the Skip Barber Racing School. Now, this is your opportunity. I've got a couple minutes left here. If you have something you'd like to add or comment, if you're appalled by the Skip Barber Racing School going away, make sure you say something. I need to know what you think about it. And I would like to do one more thing before we end here, and I'm just making sure people have a chance to do their commenting down there if they want to add anything else. I want to make sure to invite you onto racershq.com, where you can grab one of the 3 cheat sheets, which is totally free. Love to help you out. If you're a rookie, I've got something that's going to help you launch your racing endeavor. If you're an intermediate driver, there's definitely something there that's going to help you break through that stagnation, your plateau, whatever it is, and start driving more like a pro racer. And if you're already there, I have something for you as well, for you aspiring professionals who think you really have what it takes to be a pro racer. I've got something up there for you, 3 amazing smart strategies to attack the income side of professional racing. All right, I am about 5 minutes over here. I think that's pretty much going to cover it. Really appreciate everyone coming on and being here for the live session. Let's do it again next week, 7 p.m. Eastern, next Wednesday. Thanks a lot, everybody. I will see you there.